In the last section, we spoke about how our program is currently fetching one URL at a time, waiting for that request to complete, and then moving on to the next URL. The impact of this is that if we have many URLs that we might want to fetch in our program, it'll take a long time to fetch every single one because we're doing each one at a time. So the very quick solution we came up with was to decide that we might want to figure out some way to fetch multiple requests at the same time. So we want to make a request to google.com, Facebook, Stack Overflow, and so on, all at the same time, and then let them all resolve and eventually print out the status of each one. So now it's up to us to figure out how to get Go to actually make these requests at the same time. So in this video, we're going to start to talk about Go routines. Now there's a lot to talk about with Go routines. So in this video, we're going to talk a little bit about the theory behind them and how they work on your local computer or like on your local operating system right now. Then we'll take a break, we'll come back in the next video, and we'll start to actually implement Go routines inside of our program. So this video is all about some of the theory, and then we'll do the actual implementation in a little bit. So with that in mind, let's get to it. Now the first thing I want you to understand is that when we launch a Go program, like when we compile it and execute it, we automatically create one Go routine. You can think of a Go routine as being something that exists inside of our running program or our process. This Go routine takes every line of code inside of our program and executes them one by one. Now, when I say line of code in our program and executes them one by one, do remember that all the code that we are writing gets compiled, and so we can't literally look at each line and say, okay, this line, this line, this line, because the actual compiled form of our code might look a little bit differently. But for the sake of discussion, we can kind of imagine that a Go routine just executes our code line by line. Now, I want to dive into our existing program and think about how this main Go routine that gets created is executing the code inside of our program. So we start up our program. This line or all this code inside of here, this is all the code out of our program, is automatically executed line by this Go routine. So the Go routine starts off and it creates this string of slices, or this slice of strings, excuse me. It then kicks into this for loop where it starts to iterate over each link inside of that slice. It then calls the check link function right here. We then enter into the check link function, and then we get to this actual HTTP request right here. Now, this function call is what we refer to as a blocking call, because the code inside of here takes some amount of time to execute. While this function is being executed, the main Go routine can do nothing else. So it's essentially frozen on this line of code right here, and it has no ability to continue on or do anything else inside of our program. So we're going to fix this problem. We're going to somehow mitigate that problem right there by introducing the idea of launching additional Go routines. So let's take a look at a diagram here and figure out how this is going to work. Okay, so I know the text here is really small, but hopefully it's still legible. Now I'm going to pull in a couple elements onto the screen as well, so that's why I'm kind of zoomed out right now. So this is the change that we're going to make to our program. When we call that check link function, we are going to place a new keyword in front of it, and that new keyword is just the word Go. When we use the Go keyword, it means run this function inside of a brand new Go routine. And so let's start to think through what is going to happen once we start to launch new Go routines to run our code. So we still start up our main routine. We still create the string of slices. We start iterating through the for loop. We then see the Go keyword right here, and the Go runtime automatically creates a new Go routine to run the code specifically inside of the check link function. And so as soon as we hit this Go keyword right here, we can kind of imagine that a brand new Go routine is created and executed on our computer. So we get this second Go routine, or this second kind of engine that runs code inside of our program. It boots up and it starts to run all of the code inside of the check link function line by line. Now the very first line of code that is executed by this new Go routine is still that same blocking call that we had before, the actual get request. So this new Go routine, this second one that just got created to run just this function right here, immediately we can imagine goes to sleep or stops executing code as it waits for this get function to actually be completed. Now, when this thing says, oh, hey, this go routine kind of emits an event and it tells the rest of the world and says, hey, it looks like I just ran into a blocking function call here. If there's any other go routine inside of our program that wants to run, now would be a great time to do it. And so at that point, control flow is then passed back to our main go routine. This go routine then says, okay, well, it looks like I just launched that function. It looks like that go routine can do nothing else. So I'm going to do the next step of iteration through the for loop. And so it goes to the next element inside of the slice, and then it runs this line of code again, where it creates a second new go routine that runs the checklink function. And so we can imagine that this second go routine is then spun up. The second go routine then runs the very first line of code here and attempts to make a GET request to this URL. And the same exact thing is going to happen as the previous one. So this go routine is going to say, oh, looks like this is a blocking function call. There's nothing else I can do until this thing is complete. And so control of the program is going to go back to the main go routine again, and it's going to continue spawning new go routines until there is a number equal to the number of strings or addresses that we are trying to fetch here. So the important thing to keep in mind here is that every single time we use this go keyword to launch a new function, we are launching a new go routine. And we can think of these go routines as being like a little engine that starts to chomp through code inside of a single function. So the syntax around these go routines is pretty straightforward. We're going to take any function call that we want to be executed inside of its own individual go routine and just add the go keyword right in front of it. Okay, so that might seem like, hey, not that bad, kind of straightforward, but there are still a lot of very interesting rules and side effects and kind of the theory behind the stuff that's really important to understand. So we're going to take a quick break right now, and we're going to come back in the next section and start to talk about some of the real edge cases or some of the things that you should probably know and understand about these go routines. So quick break, and we'll start to talk about these additional items in just a minute.